Hello and welcome to post-match reaction to the Crusaders versus the Lions. The game finished 36-10 with a rather convincing win by the Crusaders, let's be honest. In the first, few minutes, it felt like it could have even been more than that. The Lions didn't help themselves, getting caught offside early on, giving penalties away to the Crusaders, allowing them to march down the field. And the errors by the Crusaders meant they didn't score straight away. But even in that first 4 minutes, we had the Lions kicking the ball away about 3 times from memory. And you're kind of thinking, look, you're not going to... The Crusaders are number one for tries scored in return from kicks, along with the Hurricanes, I think it was from the stats I was looking at earlier. So you're not going to beat the Hurricanes by kicking the ball to them, especially when it stays infield. And that's what we were seeing. We're seeing infield kicks that were being caught generally on the full and being run back by the Crusaders. Eventually, one of those led to a try. Some pretty magic hands from Sever Reese, who would go on to be man of the match, released Braden Enor, who was playing in the centres today rather than on the wing, and his pace was way too much to go over and score the try. The Crusaders had another break very soon after that, and they really should have scored again. Except David Havili, one of those players that has been mentioned as being a replacement for Damon McKenzie in that All Black squad, knocked the ball on with a try going begging. So yeah, a bit unlucky for the boy there. On that one, Mapu got caught offside again. Now a lot of people saying that he was unlucky to be called offside by the referee in that situation, and there's going to be some moaning on Twitter, especially about the refereeing inconsistencies and stuff. But there always is whenever the Crusaders win. The Crusaders are just have done their work and practiced very hard and are very good at playing right on that limit around. And knowing what they can get away with and what they can't get away with the referee compared to anybody else. And so hence we're always going to get that moaning, which isn't sad, unfortunately, because they are very good in other ways. What was really surprising, though, from that knock-on was that the Crusaders went for the posts and took 3 points at that point to go 10-0 in the lead. And then the Lions came back from that and had their period of dominance. Went to the corner a couple of times and looked like they were going for the try when they had opportunities to take 3, but eventually decided when they had a kick in front of the posts to take 3 to narrow the game down to 10-3. Then we had a sort of period there where both sides had kind of bits of dominance, but on the whole, dominance was mainly on the Crusaders' side. And we then eventually had one scrum that actually, where the ball came out of it, the vast majority of scrums end up in penalties or free kicks. The scrums were an absolute joke in this game. Both sides not setting a stable scrum, and it was going all over the place. Lions had the slight upper hand on most of these, and surprisingly enough, it was one of their scrums where the ball actually came out of it. Very interesting setup behind the scrums, where they had 2 players. Two players in a line, one behind the other, and then another 2 players in a line, one behind the other. So a group of 4 players, relatively narrow in the back. So when you think you've got 9 players in the scrum, another 4 players, that's 13 players. You've only got 2 other players. So they definitely weren't going wide from this scrum. They were going to try some sort of move in the narrow channels, and then we'll have their forwards obviously piling over soon afterwards as a plan. Unfortunately for them, Ryan Crotty intercepted and picked up the pass off the hip and went down the field. Lots of players around him, managed to keep his feet very well, but eventually went down. When he went down, he held onto his head and was very slow getting back up, unfortunately. Soon afterwards, he went off for a HIA, but from that, the Sever Reese eventually got the ball out wide, sat Quagga Smith down, went through about 4 or 5 players, and eventually went over. On first viewing, it looks like he possibly was second movement and crawling, but when you watch it back in slow-mo, you can actually see that no one ever held him down, and he's not really crawling, he's just lunging for the line. So fantastic try by Severis there. Really didn't deserve to get through those 4 or 5 players that were all trying to tackle him. But hey, great play. And suddenly it's 17-3 and Mo'unga's kicking boots are back on after some pretty poor kicking early at the beginning of the season. He's now on song. And suddenly it's 17-3 and that's how we went into half-time. Unsurprisingly, it's 6 minutes before half-time and the Crusaders score. Surprise, surprise, come out in the second half and apparently Crotty had passed his HIA but he didn't return to the pitch. Mitch Hunt stayed on at fullback and we saw David Havili slot into that number 12 role, which is really kind of interesting. He played really well in that role and showed his versatility. And when you get to a Rugby World Cup, having players who are versatile like that can be really useful. We've seen the fact that Geordie Barrett has been moved around as well. So perhaps indication there again that Havili could be on the radar for the All Blacks. Early on, the Crusaders took a 5-metre line-out maul and failed. They tried again and failed again. The Lions defensively were very good in this game. Sure, they lost by 36 points. They conceded 4 tries. Was it 4 or 5 tries in this game? But even I think it's 4 tries. But even so, they still were defensively pretty strong. The third 5-metre line out that the Crusaders got, they weren't in succession, but they were within a few minutes. The Cody Taylor peels around the back, finds a good gap, has Bridge on his left shoulder, so back on the blind side, and basically releases Bridge to basically walk over untouched. It's 24-3 for that try. So I've seen 5 tries because Enel got 2, Bridge got and Reese got 2, and Bridge got 1. So there we go. From the kickoff, then a couple of phases from that, and then running from their own 22, which, as I said earlier, the Lions really weren't willing to do. They were always kicking it from there, and that just gave a lot of possession to the Crusaders, and hence they got through a lot of tackling. When we get to the stats, you'll see that. But it got spun wide out. Enel hits the gap. Sorry, Bridge got 2 tries, not Enel got 2 tries. Hits the gap and has got some wonderful pace. Bridge comes from outside in, and Enel passes to Bridge, and Bridge goes over again, untouched for his second. So 2 tries in basically 2 minutes for Bridge there. And suddenly it's a 31-3 game, and obviously the game is well gone. 3 tries either side of half time. That one 6 minutes before half time, then 2 within 10 minutes of the other side. So just over a quarter of an hour, 3 tries, and basically the game is well and truly gone. It looked like the Crusaders were going to run away and rack up a really big score, but Combrink at that point then took an intercept. One of those situations where if he didn't get the intercept, the Crusaders were probably in. But hey, he took it and was way too fast for anyone else, and had the pace to go over and score. And so against the run of play, the Lions pulled one back. Richard Mo'unga thought he'd been substituted at that point, but it wasn't actually. It was the Lions 10 that was being substituted, and the referee apologised. That possibly might have been some of what disrupted Richard Mo'unga's preparation, because the restart from that kick then went out on the full, which gave them a scrum. From there, a free kick was awarded to the Crusaders, and Havili released Tafua on a fantastic line that went through several players, and released Severis, put a grubber through, and was the man to chase it down and score. That was on 57 minutes. So that quarter, that 20 minutes after half time, suddenly it's 3 tries, and that's where the Crusaders really run away with games, and unsurprisingly, they did it again. So that the quarter before half time, quarter after half time, 4 tries for the Crusaders, and it finished 36-10. Neither side could add any more to it. That's the 25th consecutive win at home for the Crusaders. The record is 26 by the Crusaders themselves a few years ago. So can they break that win? Obviously, that gives them a lot of confidence going into games, and teams know that basically turning up there against the Crusaders, your chances of winning are pretty minimal. if you think that the teams next season are going to have 6 games, in 2020, are going to have 6 home games a season, or 6 or 7, to go 25 games, that's over seasons. So that's impressive stuff by the Crusaders. The Lions had to get through an awful lot of work in this game. As I say, they kicked away ball quite a bit, and so that meant they didn't get much possession. So it was 57% possession and 59% territory for the Crusaders. It appeared to be more than that, or it was more than that, but they evened itself out towards the end. 159 tackles had to be attempted by the Lions. The Crusaders ended up with 107. They ended up doing a bit of work towards the end there. One stat that will jump out and be a bit of a surprise to people is the Crusaders turned over the ball 27 times. That is absolutely criminal. And the fact they've gone away and won this game so convincingly shows that the Lions really did not profit off that turnover ball. We saw turnover ball being kicked away several times, and the commentators saying, "Hey, you've got to kick. You can't be kicking away turnover ball." They only turned the ball over 14 times themselves. Kicks from hand, 21 by the Lions. Surprisingly, it was as high as 18 by the Crusaders. Didn't feel like they'd kicked that much, but we had those grubber kicks, one by Reese. We had Cody Taylor try one that actually just bounced off the player in front of him and didn't go anywhere. They weren't all long-range kicks, whereas the majority of the kicks by the Lions were much more long-range than that. Only 95 runs by the Lions to the 149 by the Crusaders, and that's where you can see the dominance of the Crusaders. They had the ball much more. They were running it much more. 10 clean line breaks to 2 from the Lions, and that's where basically this game was won. One of the things we'll talk about, we're going to be at the Zone Sports Bar tomorrow night for the Hurricanes versus the Chiefs. So if you're in Hamilton, come down and join us for that, and we'll go through a whole bunch of stats. But one of the stats we'll talk about is a number of tries that are scored off first phase ball. A team like the Hurricanes, for example, don't score tries after 3 phases. Effectively, they score it all, or they don't concede tries after 3 phases. The majority of tries are scored off that first phase ball, and by kicking away all that first phase turnover possession, you really are limiting yourself to the number of tries you can score, which is very. It's a shame that we saw the Lions doing that so much. There's going to be a lot of talk after this game about Sevu Reece. Obviously, he got those 2 tries. He set up the Braden Ennell try with some wonderful hands as well, and also put some hits in. Now, and you'll hear he quite rightly got the man of the match. 13 carries, 73 run meters, 2 clean breaks, and 10 defenders beaten. So basically 10 people who tried to tackle him and failed in there, caused 10 missed tackles. That is something very impressive. So there's going to be lots of talk about him being in the All Blacks, and we heard the commentator saying he's got the full all-round game, and he has got a very good game. He's decent under the high ball. He can run it back. He's got power. He's got good hands. He's got good feet. One area that he does need to be careful of, though, is his tackling. He does have a tendency to put the shoulder in and not bother too much with the arms. He is smaller of stature, and so he does tend to do that to try and get the power through. So keep an eye out for him. There were a couple of tackles here which he got away with, but as I say, he has a tendency not to use the arms and to be more of a shoulder barge tackle than a wrapping tackle. So keep an eye out for that in future games around him, and you'll see that might be an area that he's told to work on by the All Black selectors. Braden Ennell, 9 run meters, 115. 9 runs, 115 run meters. He had that break for the try in the first half, and he had a break that released the player in the second. So Braden Ennell had a very good game as well, and he's showing he can do well there. We talked about Havili, also played well, especially when he replaced Crotty in there. Even though he dropped that ball, and Bridge had another good game as well. That all comes off the back of obviously the work done by the forwards, which gave them good forward ball. I mean, we did have one stage where they went through 25 phases, I think it was, And they ended up stopping to spinning it wide because they weren't getting they couldn't get themselves structured enough, and so just pick and go, pick and go, pick and go, and eventually the Lions forced them to knock it on, and that was all in the Lions 22. So Lions say decent defence tonight, even with that, and that's where you see players like Harmon 12 carries, Kieran Reid 13 carries, Strange got through 8 carries, Taylor 8 carries, Moody 7 carries. There's a lot of carries by those forwards in this game. A lot of work by them. Defensively, not so much. I mean, we've already talked about the fact that they had to do a lot less tackles, but even so, Harmon and Reid again topped that. Harmon with 13 tackles, none missed. Kieran Reid with 11 tackles, 2 missed. Kieran Reid's is showing some really good form in this Rugby World Cup year, and after having such a short season last season, that is very good to see. On the penalty side of things, Joe Moody was a penalty machine in this one. He gave up 4 penalties, predominantly around scrum time. The Lions had the better of that scrum, even though it was a total mess, and we saw that there. Mapoe gave up 3 penalties himself. Those 2 offsides early doors didn't help him. Combrick gave up a couple as well from fullback, which is not what you want to see. Props often can get on the wrong side of ref and give up a few. When your backs are giving up 3 and a couple, then you know something's a little bit wrong. Defensively, as we've already said, they got through a lot of work, especially the forwards. I mean, all the starting forwards. Actually, most got Sito 14 tackles, Coetzee 11, Sadie 16, Lewis 15, Ori 12, Schumann 16. That's all big bouts of work. Brink and Quagga Smith got through 7 each, so not so much. But they're kind of the guys who are over the ball and are trying to be the second man in rather than the first man in. So they're still going through a lot of work. You just don't see it so much necessarily in the stats. And even the backs got through. I mean, Mahuza 7 tackles, none missed for a winger. Fantastic work there. Mapoe 7, Yang Cheese with 8 as well. So lots of work by on defensively, which definitely tired them out towards the end of the game. Attacking Combrink, we had that intercept try, and that's a lot of his 89 metres running. Nobody else got over 30 metres carrying by the Lions, and that was shown by the fact they only made 2 clean breaks all game, and that's why they're so low on that. Mapoe also got through a lot of work again, 10 carries. He was top carrier for the team, but I mentioned already that Smith, Brink, Schumann, 9, 8, 8. They all got through a chunk of work, as to Coetzee with 8 carries as well. So hard effort there from the Lions, but it wasn't to be. A lot of it was pretty predictable. Whereas with the Crusaders, I mean, I've got some text saying, look, they're confusing running lines that are debatably blocking. Well, yeah, that's one view of it. The other view of it is the fact that they are actually also running 3, maybe even 4 options per move, and so the defence have got multiple people running at them, and they've got to make a decision as to who they go for. With the Lions, it was going to be that person, and it was a matter of, can I know what's coming. The only question is, can I stop it? And most of the time, the Crusaders could. There wasn't the same level. There weren't the same shapes of same questions being asked of the defence, because it was that say a fairly predictable system that they were running. That obviously cements or just helps to cement the Crusaders' space at the top of the competition. They're going to finish top. I think we all know that the final is probably going to be in Christchurch. They're probably going to win it as well. It's very difficult to see past that unless we see a whole bunch of injuries, which obviously we don't want to do. So I guess question marks. Crotty passed the HIA, which is good. He didn't come back on the pitch, which I think is a sensible option. He's a person that has obviously had head injury issues in the past. So I think the Crusaders did the right thing by him. I'd like to see him probably rested next week, but we'll see how that pans out when the Sharks, I believe, come down from memory. The Lions, they will be heading over to Australia, I guess, at this point now for the next part of their tour. I've forgotten who they're playing next. But that loss, let's be honest, it's a predictable loss. They couldn't have been expecting to win it. And with the win against the Chiefs last weekend, you've got to say a successful section of their tour to get 1 win out of 2 in New Zealand. Next up, we have the Sunwolves hosting the Highlanders. So catch that game in about 5 minutes for those of you watching live. And I will say I'm back tomorrow. I'll be live from the Zone Sports Bar in Hamilton, so come on down to Sky City, join us, have a bite to eat and a drink, and come over and say hi. I'll be the guy in the silly hat.